Hello, everyone. This is Stacy. Welcome to the landing. Today on the landing, I'm honored to welcome someone who truly embodies the spirit of Down East. A proud resident of Davis, North Carolina, she's a local treasure whose joy is as contagious as her smile. She lights up every room she walks into and carries with her the legacy of strong, grounded women who raised her to love this place we call home. She's learned not only to appreciate the incredible food that surrounds us, from the waters to the gardens, but also how to cook it with care and share it with heart. Whether she's at the stove or around the table, she brings people together with grace, laughter, and a deep sense of connection to our community. Sit back and enjoy our conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Landing. We are going to talk about some good stuff today. I can't wait to hear what our special guest has to share with us. She has got one of the prettiest smiles down east, and she always just makes me happy. So when she agreed to talk with us today, I was thrilled. And before I go any further, tell us who you are, what's your name, who's your crowd, where you're from.
Okay. My name is Maryann Styron 4, and I am from Davis. I am I'm a Davis Styron crowd. Been there pretty much forever. My parents were Ann and Roy Styron. They were both school teachers. Corbett and Minnie Davis were my grandparents, and Mary and Roy Styron were my paternal grandparents. And like I say, as far back as anybody can remember, we've been Davis Shoreman.
Davis Shoreman through and through.
That's right.
I love it. Well, we are going to be talking about food and Down East food traditions and all of that wonderful stuff. So we're going to get started. We're going to go right to it. And when you think back, if anyone asked you about your favorite food traditions or any food traditions that you have, what comes to mind, like as a little girl?
Well, it's always been important.
Yes.
But I would definitely say, even as a little girl, I don't know, probably even 5, 6. I mean, if nothing else, you had to help wash dishes, but all the women were in the kitchen. Whether it was at Granny's house or Grandmama's house, all the women were in there. I was at a young age, I got to cream the potatoes on Sunday, and Granny was sitting on a stool at the stove frying chicken, and my cousin Gail was watching the collards. And so it was more of almost a social event, just a big family time whenever we got together at least once a week and ate as an extended family, like the big dining room table kind of thing.
So that was typically a Sunday?
That was typically a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh.
Sunday dinner, if you will, which on Sundays was lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
So
right, and that's important to understand.
Yes, absolutely.
Dinner was lunch on Sunday. Yes.
That's right. Yes, that was the important meal because you didn't do anything else after that.
You ate leftovers.
You had a cold collared sandwich or something like that for your dinner or for supper, but you didn't. You only cooked once on Sunday.
That's right. Well, see, I remember that too. I remember all the aunts being in the kitchen and being a little girl, excited, can't wait till I can go in there.
Right.
So you mentioned creamed potatoes, which is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the staples, some of the things that you all eat a lot of? Like, what were some of the favorite dishes?
Always had at least collards or what? Actually, both of my grandmothers called like green salad, which is still one of my favorites.
What's that?
It was like a mixture of, because they had their own gardens. Well, they didn't necessarily always have enough turnips or enough, what's another one I'm trying to think of, like mustard greens or whatever, So they would pick them, they'd pick whatever they had for that particular meal and just mix them all together.
Oh.
Yes. And it's quite delicious, I have to say.
So necessity
Absolutely.
created it.
Absolutely.
Which
So,
is, that makes sense.
and in the summer, the collards aren't that great. The frost hadn't hit them. So we really ate green salad in the summertime a lot more than collards. And of course, then more, in the fall and winter. But you always had collards.
Yes. Yeah. Whether they frosted hit them or not.
Exactly. They might not have been the best, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I know. It was funny because I remember Grandma Mary Frances loved cooking collards. And in the summer, she put more sugar in them
Yes.
than she would in the fall.
Yes.
Yeah. What traditions do you have that, like maybe even around a holiday or a special occasion? Is there something that you can recall that comes to mind? Like I remember Mom when we were growing up, our birthday, she would always let us pick like our favorite meal or stuff like that. And we all had our different thing that Mom would cook. Did you all do anything like that?
I don't really remember that. I have to say, if I think about something that Mama and I were famous for,
Yes.
was our dressing at Thanksgiving.
Oh.
And some people call it stuffing, Mama called it dressing. And just the fact that everybody looked forward to that every year. And one time, and of course, it got to where she would make me make it, and saute the onions and the celery and do all that stuff, and of course, chicken broth. Well, one year she had set out the cans for me on this, like a couple cans of chicken broth, and of course, I opened one and I dumped the chicken broth into the the mixture. Of course, I also would cook actual cornbread to go in it, and I opened both cans. I didn't look. And when I dumped the second can, it was French onion soup. Well, I about freaked out. I was like, this is the most horrible thing ever. And of course, Mom was like, why ever stir it up? Well, from then on, we always made sure we put at least one can of French onion soup in it. Yes, so that was a happy accident that turned into a tradition.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
Yep.
So your dressing had, you mentioned onions, celery.
Onions and celery and bacon. Sometimes we put oysters in it, depending upon availability.
I was wondering
yes,
that.
Yes, depending upon availability, we would do that also. Chicken broth, like I say, homemade cornbread with Granny's homemade cornbread recipe. And of course the Pepperidge Farm, typical kind of thing.
Oh,
but yeah,
sounds really good. So a happy accident. I like them when it's happy.
Yes, yes,
yeah. I can imagine when you dumped that, you were at first.
I was a little bit aggravated. Just a little bit aggravated.
Just a little bit. So, did you all eat a lot of seafood growing up? Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about
that?
Well,
my father loved to fish. His father was a commercial fisherman, and he was not, but he still loved to, like in the spring, he had soft crab floats, back in the day. We'd go to the banks first thing on Saturday mornings and, haul the nets and bring them and had them down to the shore,
and you'd go? Would you go?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I always went with him. And so again, you've got that also part of the culture, part of the memories and the precious memories.
For sure.
Of learning how to do all that. I'd like to have that little wooden skiff back that had that well in it. My Lord.
Yes.
Anyway, because he let me run the boat, and he'd tell me where to go. I mean, it's not like we were flying or anything. You're hauling a net.
Right.
But so we would do that. But he also loved to cast fish, and he thought that a speckled trout was the only thing on earth. But if it had been up to him, we would have had fish for supper every night.
Yeah.
And it would have been okay with me too. Now, Mama, she was a really, really good cook. And she hated to cook, which is not typical because normally if you don't like to do it, you don't excel at it. But she really did. She was a very good cook. And she loved hogfish. She didn't, everything else, whatever, she'd eat it and but that was her favorite.
Wow.
So
I've never eaten a hogfish.
That was I mean, that was to her was like I don't
Wow.
even know. I guess
Aren't they really bony, or are they not? Or is it? Am I
you
thinking about
generally
something else?
cook it in the whole, yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, you can't be bonophobic
Mm-hmm.
if you're gonna. They're not for the faint of
Yeah.
heart.
What's your favorite fish, but what's your favorite way to cook it? Because, there's different ways.
Yes,
You
yes,
can
yes.
do all kinds.
I do prefer it fried.
Okay.
I do have, I don't know where Mama found it. It was a recipe she found somewhere that you do. It was, what is it? It's, you crush up cornflakes and like really, really fine,
Mm-hmm.
and Parmesan cheese and thyme,
Oh.
and then you bake it. And that is really, really good as well.
Whew, I'm sure it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Truly my favorite fish is a fresh bluefish.
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, truly. In fact, last Friday, one of my little nephews went fishing with my neighbor, and they caught a load of bluefish. And I've even had a couple friends who aren't from here who
Uh-huh.
came while he was there cooking them. And they went on and on and on about how that was just the greatest thing ever. And I said, honey, I'm telling you right now, fresh bluefish,
It's hard to beat.
yeah, it's real hard to beat.
Now, did you fry them?
We did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, I'm teaching my nephew to fry them. But
Oh, yeah.
yes,
That's
he's very good at the frying part. We're still working on the not destroying the entire kitchen, so it doesn't look like it snowed in the floor. And,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
like
Oh,
we
yeah.
don't have to drag the fish from the sink to the stove. We can bring the breader thing to the sink. We don't have to slop the water all the way across the
Right.
floor. Little things you got to learn.
Little things.
Yeah.
But yeah, he'll get it.
That's right.
My favorite is probably a baked flounder.
I am not a huge flounder fan.
I only like it baked
Yeah.
with
I don't.
onions and potatoes.
Well, yeah, that's, I mean,
you know.
that's hard to beat.
Yeah.
Minced drum, that kind of, I mean, I'd never
Mhm.
met a fish I didn't like.
Right. I'll eat it. And now a charcoal mullet too.
Shh, you better believe it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And of course, David Paul can he can fry anything. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I'm getting hungry.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Now I want some July mullet.
That's right. So is fish your favorite seafood, or what's your favorite?
Probably. I mean, if there was one, yeah. No, I mean, there's, again, shrimp,
Love it all.
crab, yes, I love
Mhm.
it all. And just about any way that you can do it.
Yeah. My favorite's oysters.
Yeah.
I
mean,
I love an oyster. Pretty
me
good.
too. Now, I got to throw this in here too, because
Please
my
do.
father he would roll in his grave. Another little favorite part of a trout.
Mm-hmm.
Do you eat the sound?
No.
No. Well, it's called. Daddy always called it sound, but it's basically the swim bladder. Which when you say swim bladder, people say "ooh, bladder," they think pig. But
Yeah. No.
it's. I mean, when a fish sounds, it goes down in the water quickly, and a trout is. I'm sure there has to be bigger fish that do that, but a trout actually has one of those. And what they do is they fill it with air. Let's see, they fill it with air if they want to, get to the surface quickly.
Okay.
And it's probably doesn't look too appetizing, but it's kind of a whitish, silvery color. It's just like a little air bladder. And I mean, depending upon the size of the fish, they're, kind of elongated.
Yeah.
It's really, really chewy, like kind of like even gummy.
See, no, those words don't sound good to me, Maryann.
Most people say it and are like, what?
Yeah.
But I do have to say, my little nephew, I made the mistake. I said sometimes you need to be careful about what you try to convince people to try.
Right.
Because we had a bunch of trout he cooked one night, and I got him to try the sound, and so now we fight over it.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So when you're cleaning it, now you have that.
It's just
part of it?
Just like it would be if it's got a little piece of roe or whatever.
Yeah.
It's, just a little separate piece that you might, would assume are guts per se, but it's not guts.
Nope. Never been there.
Pass. Okay.
Never done that. So I won't say I don't like it, but.
Well, it is definitely, and it came from, again, the necessity, and you at least tried everything that you had available to you.
Well, I've often wondered about who in the world tried the first oyster.
Exactly.
Or tried the first,
I'm sure glad they did.
Yeah.
But they were probably hungry,
Yeah, and
so
I wouldn't have been the first because they're not pretty. But Do you like roe?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
All the roe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you bake it? How do you cook it?
I mean, if it's like you say, mullet roe, like fall mullet roe, yes. But
Yeah.
I mean, you'll even get trout, with little ones. And usually, just because if you're frying the trout, you're gonna,
Fry it with it.
yeah,
Yeah. Daddy used to, he would wrap the mullet roe in tinfoil
Mm.
and he'd put it in the ashes because we had a fireplace and he would put it in the ashes
like kind of smoke it.
and smoke it.
Mm.
And that's my favorite way. And of course, I don't eat it like that.
Yeah.
Hardly ever. Not in been years and years, but that was my favorite because it was drier and it was, had that smoky taste.
Yes.
I don't know, any family recipes and you've mentioned your dressing, but any things that you want to share with us?
My mother / grandmother, her mother, were pretty famous for their light rolls.
Okay, because I have heard about their light rolls. Okay,
Yes.
so tell us a little bit why they were so special.
And it's kind of funny, Stacy, because my cousin Gail, she called me a month ago and she said, "Did Granny put Mazola oil in her rolls?" And I said, "No." I said, "She used Crisco." "Well, that's what I thought." I said, "Yes." When Granny did it, and we talked about it because I don't even remember her measuring anything. Like, she put a certain amount of flour and then you scooped up some Crisco with your hand and you sat and you kind of, you work it until you've incorporated it and you get to where
It feels right.
Right, the right amount you have in there, and
Yeah.
she's going to use one yeast cake or whatever.
Yeah.
But my mama's recipe that I have that she wrote says Granny's light rolls. That's what it says. But Sis and I also talked about the fact, my cousin, that if Mama could figure out a way to make it a little bit easier, she was going to work that out.
Yes.
So, it had to be bread flour, preferably gold medal, had to be Mazola oil. And when and I always accused her of not sharing this part with me for a very, very long time until I caught her doing it and questioned her about it. But you put the water, you add the yeast to the water. You don't put the yeast in the thing and then add the water. Okay. Yeast goes on top.
Okay.
But then, however much sugar, I can't think right this second, half a cup, 3/4 of a cup. Anyway, sprinkle some of the sugar on top of the yeast because it feeds the yeast. Well, I'd been trying making them for years and they'd be all right, And when I caught her doing it, I said, "What are you doing?" She was like, "What are you talking about?" "I'm feeding the yeast." I said, "Well, you've never told me that before." She said, "Yes, I did." I said, "No, you did not."
Because if you did, I'd be doing it.
Exactly. And she said, "Well, certainly I did." Whatever. But it's incredible how much more the yeast, just waiting, in the warm water before you even pour it in the flour. Just you don't add extra sugar, however much you've scooped to put in the whole recipe.
Right.
You just sprinkle some of that on top.
See?
Yeah.
But it matters.
It matters a lot.
Wow. Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yep.
There's something about the smell of a light roll that just, it does my soul good.
It does.
We would drive up into Grandmama's driveway and you would smell it wafting out of the house, and you're like, "Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Here we go. It's going to be good." So good. Oh, I can't stand it. Through the years, you mentioned that about the little secret. Have you found yourself, because they didn't measure, and so asking Mama for a recipe, or Grandmama used to, they couldn't tell you a recipe because it would be a little bit of this, a little bit of that, handful of this.
Right.
Have you found that while you're trying to work out these recipes that you've added your own little spin to some of them?
Absolutely. And I think that is one of the things that I enjoy about cooking is thinking, okay, even if I find a recipe on the internet or something, and I'll read through and say, "Ooh, that's a good spice. That's a good herb. Ooh, what if I added some of this? Or what if I added some of that?"
Yeah.
Which is also a reason that I'm not a good baker, like cakes and things like
When the
that.
science matters.
Right. Because that's a whole lot more of a science that, you can't just throw in this much baking powder or that. Not
Yeah.
like my friend Joe. He's a very good baker. He really is into that. He even finally ordered like a scale
Mm-hmm.
because apparently cups. I mean, it matters whether
Yeah.
you've scooped a heavy cup or you scooped a light cup, and so he actually he weighs his flour
Oh, wow.
when he does bread or cakes and things like that. And see, I'm
Mhm.
not into that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I'd rather say, that's about a cup, Just
Oh,
pour it straight out the milk
pour
jug
it
in the.
in- yeah, it's okay. Oh, it's too wet. Let's add a little bit more flour.
Throw some flour in there. It'll be fine.
I love it.
It doesn't work with baking that way.
No, it does not at all. Oh my goodness, so funny. What were some things when you think back about traditions, some foods that when you meet somebody, you're like, okay, you got to eat this or you've got to try that. Do you have any things that you think are the epitome of
Mama's stewed hard crabs.
Oh my goodness.
And a big pan of light rolls, like a big, 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 big pan. In fact, when my ex-husband, the first time he ever had hard crabs at Mama's house, and Daddy said, how many rolls did you eat? And he said, I think I ate a whole row. I mean, you can't.
No, because you got to sop.
Because you can't. Well, exactly, because that was her her gravy. Oh my goodness, because she always added like at least a pound of crab meat to the gravy.
Oh.
So it was more kind of almost like a crab bisque, if you will. Like you could be lazy and just eat the gravy if you didn't want to have to pick the crabs.
Uh-huh. Well, because that's a hard job.
Yes, it is.
But it's worth it.
Yes, it is.
The first time my husband had stewed hard crabs, he thought it tasted delicious. Still does. He loves them. But he also thought it was way too much work.
Yeah, it's just a lot of work.
And so he would try to convince me to, pick them. And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not going to start that. But it's the gravy dripping off your elbows.
Yep.
I mean, stewed hard crabs are hard.
Just about put the whole roll of paper towels on the table and just pass it around.
Oh, it's so, so good.
Yeah.
Now, do you like soft crabs?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Had some a couple of nights ago.
I want to get a hold of some. Are they still available, or is it too late?
You might be able to find some people that still my connection, if you will, is out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, because I love them.
And then I also think like some of the other things I was thinking about on the way here and whatever else was like wild onions. And
Oh yes.
How our different communities kind of were known for, like David Shorman, were onion eaters.
Yes.
We everybody knew. I mean, when you had wild onions in the spring,
Yes.
don't cut the grass till I make sure there's any wild onions there.
Well, it's funny you mention that because I have heard some folks, and I don't remember seeing this, but I have heard folks talk about the women picking the wild onions.
Wherever they would, yeah.
Yeah, like the side of the road, in their yard,
yeah,
whatever.
absolutely.
But Davis was mentioned about that.
Yes.
So did you see that? Did you do that? How do you remember?
I never actually did it. Mama and her very, very good friend, Sarah Brown. Now, Sarah Brown, honey, she'd scope out. She drove the school bus for Smyrna. And like on the whole route through Williston and Davis and whatever. I don't think she was worried about getting the youngins off the bus as much as she was scoping out where all the wild onions were in all the communities. And then she'd come to Mama and she'd say, come on, let's go.
Uh-huh.
And they would go and, trim all the wild onions and cook them up, put some slick pastry in them. And
Yeah. Yeah. See, I mean, we didn't do that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, people from Williston, bean eaters, Beantown, I mean, that's because
Is that why it's called Bean
Yeah.
Town? Like I had never really thought about it.
Yeah, it was kind of the same thing that they were stereotypically, at least,
Yeah.
always eating beans and
Huh.
yeah.
How about that? Wow, that's interesting. Anything else come to mind as have you ever had any disasters in the kitchen? You had that happy accident you mentioned, but
Yes.
I mean, I've had many of like pan of light bread that I've had just thrown away. I've, trying to figure it out. I've done things like that. Have you?
I don't know that I've ever had any light rolls that we didn't eat. They might not have been the best in the world, but I think we probably still ate them. No, and I can't really, and it's mainly probably because I don't experiment as much as
Yeah.
I mean, I try to make sure that I don't want to have to go through it more than once.
Yeah.
For one thing.
Right. But it also sounds like you learned at the elbows of your aunts and mamas,
Yes.
and so you learned.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that I was thinking about at Grandma Mary's, because we did live in Moorhead till I was 7. Mom and Dad are both from Davis, but they both worked that end of the county.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved back to Davis when I was 7. So for a long time, the Sundays would be we'd go to church in Moorhead, and then we'd come straight to Davis. And so lunch would be, or dinner would be
Mm-hmm.
well into its processes of being done at first.
Uh-huh.
But then we would stay till middle of the afternoon at Granny's, and then we'd go down the road to Grandma Mary's and Granddad Roy's, and she would cook supper.
Oh, wow.
And so we always had, at Granny's, we always had fried chicken and sometimes stewed chicken too. Now, the fried chicken was my favorite, but 2 of my other cousins preferred stewed, so that meant Granny did both.
Of course.
If two liked fried, then everybody gets what they want.
That's exactly right.
And Grandma Mary would almost always fry fish.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a gas stove. And there was just in the sitting room, in the middle room, there was that window unit air conditioner. But the kitchen part was not air conditioned. And you turn that gas oven on, that gas stove.
Uh-huh.
Now, it was not cool in there.
I bet not.
Let me just tell you.
Because even if the windows are up, there's no cool air coming in.
No, not when you've got that monster of a... Of course, she was as cold-natured as anybody's ever been, so I don't know that it ever bothered her. But, I mean, even as a little kid, I remember being like, oh, my God, this is the hottest place I've ever been.
Oh, that's fun. Well, cooking, even in the air conditioning, can get hot. So
Yes,
I
it
can
can.
imagine.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. So if you had to pick your favorite meal, what would your favorite meal be?
That I don't have to cook.
Would say that you don't have to cook.
My favorite meal that I don't have to cook. Probably. I should make it something complicated. If I don't have to cook it.
Somebody else is doing it.
Probably about anything I ever ate at the bistro by the sea when Tim and Libby had it in Moorhead. My Lord, don't I miss it.
I know. That was so good.
I would say probably the whatever kind of fish it happened to be with the Chablis dill sauce and all that stuff. Because I typically would still go for fish when I, went there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
That really was
real
a good place. Oh, for sure. Well, dang, our time is flown by. Any parting words? Any words for those listening about the importance of tradition and embracing what we've got around here to eat? Because it's special. It took me moving away I took a lot for granted.
Yeah.
And when I moved away and realized, oh, wait, everybody can't just go eat fresh shrimp or go eat,
Right.
So what?
Or not everybody knows the best way to cook a collard. I mean, at least in our opinion.
Right. No. Yeah. Well.
Well, you know what? That's funny that you say that. My friend Joe, he travels a lot for work, and he also travels. And when I say travel, I mean like internationally.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I always want to know. What did you eat? How was this? How was that?
Yeah.
He's been to Spain and Finland and China and Australia and all the places.
Mm-hmm.
And he always says, I've been all around the world, but I have never eaten anything as good as a Down East woman cooks or a Davis Shore woman cooks.
Uh-huh.
So he's not ever been very impressed. So I think that's kind of anticlimactic for me because I'm always like, come on, there's got to be something. That you're like, oh man.
Uh-huh.
And he stands hands down that he's not ever had anything any better anywhere in the world.
Well, how about that?
Then he gets home. Yeah.
So maybe we're not wrong that we have the best food.
Well, at least in our opinion.
In our opinion. No, I mean, really, we are blessed.
We are.
And we grew up, a lot of necessity was taken care of, Daddy fishing and cooking and, catching and doing, and Mama would cook what he brought home because we had to.
Yeah.
But, oh my, what a blessing that is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is such a part of our heritage, of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the relationships that you build doing it and the things that we are blessed to be able to pass down and down and down and down.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much for
You are so welcome.
joining us. I have smiled the whole time. My face hurts.
I've enjoyed it.
But you'll have to come back sometime.
I will do it. You just let me know.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us again to The Landing. This podcast is brought to you by the Core Sound Waterfowl Museum and Heritage Center. I am your host, Stacy Davis Basden, and today's podcast was produced by April Davidson. Tune in again next week as we continue remembering, sharing, and learning together. Until then, stay safe and be kind.